Welcome to the Exposure Magazine podcast from the heart of the British nuclear test survivor community. Today on Veterans Memories, we are going to hear David's story by David McIntyre, as published in the spring 2019 edition of Exposure Magazine.
I met Amelia at Latimer Camp, Chesham. It was an officer camp where Amelia worked as a silver service waitress with the WRAC. We fell in love. Shortly after meeting, I was posted to Rheindahlen in Munchen, Gladbach, Germany, where I was in the 68 Company Royal Army Service Corps doing driver training, and then moved on to a posting at North Hague, not far from Rheindahlen. After a month or so, I was summoned to see the officer in command, Major Carter. I had no idea why he needed to see me, as I was led to his office by Sergeant Major Marchard. Once in his office, there sat Major Carter. He looked at me for a moment and then spoke. "I have a letter for you from London. It's from a young lady who's working in Kensington. Her name is Amelia Jacques, and she is pregnant." I hadn't written to Amelia as I thought the relationship was over. I was given 2 weeks' leave to go and see her. I travelled to London and met Amelia, where we decided to get married. The arrangements were made, and we married at Chesham. We then travelled on to visit my mother, who lived in Scotland. It was decided that Amelia would stay with my mother till she had had our baby, and I would go back to Germany and look into having Amelia move to be with me. While in Scotland, she gave birth to our daughter, Marie. When back in Germany, I applied for married quarters and was lucky to get a brand new 2-bedroom flat. We were happy living there and life was going well. That was until sometime later it was apparent that Marie wasn't very well. We took her to the doctors, explaining that she cries every time she is pressed on the tummy. The doctor examined her and gave her something for the pain. After a while, it was evident that she was still in pain and crying a lot because of this. We took her back 3 or 4 more times, but the doctor just kept telling us that there was nothing wrong with her. Strangely, he was insisting there was a mental problem with Amelia, and so he prescribed her Valium, which I later found out was deadly in the beginning. During this time, I had to have time off to look after Amelia and Marie when she gave birth to our son, David Jr. She returned home from the hospital, and all went well until that night when I woke up to find myself and Amelia lying in a pool of blood. I immediately called the emergency services, who took Amelia straight to hospital. I stayed at home with Marie and baby David. Amelia had an emergency operation to find out the cause of the bleeding. She asked an RAF doctor, did they leave a bit of the afterbirth? His reply was, "My dear, they left it all." Thankfully, she came home 2 days later. I was still having to take time off to care for the 3 of them. Amelia was having hallucinations of her mother and her dead sister. This carried on, while she was still being prescribed Valium. I had signed up for 22 years of service, so it was a bit of a surprise when Major Carter had me in office and informed me that I would be discharged as I couldn't perform my duties. A week later, while we were leaving married quarters, Marie closed the living room door and a large piece of plaster fell off the wall to the floor. Because of this, we had to stay in the sergeant's mess until our flight the following morning. I had to pay the mess fees and the bill for the plaster repair. This left me with 176p, all the money I had in the world. They took us to Düsseldorf Airport, and then we had a flight to London. I can't remember which airport we arrived at. I found a taxi rank and was about to ask him, "How much to Euston?" when I realised he was a sergeant I had met while travelling to Christmas Island. He had left the army and wouldn't take any money from me. We travelled from Euston to Scunthorpe and got a taxi from the station to my mother's house, costing 7 and 6pence. We were pretty much penniless. We lived at my mother's until we managed to get a council house. Amelia, through all of the travelling and moving, was still taking Valium along with a whole host of other tablets. The tablets made Amelia very sleepy. I was having to give up job after job to look after Amelia and the children. Possibly foolishly, we went on to have 2 more children before Amelia had to have a hysterectomy. Amelia was seeing a doctor, Allardyce, who asked her to go to a hospital at Bracebridge, Heath in Lincolnshire. This was an old asylum that was then a mental hospital. Over the next 30 years, Amelia was a frequent visitor to the hospital. I found out years later that during one of her stays, she ran away with another female patient and got to London before they were found. Amelia was given electric treatment, which didn't help her at all and actually made her worse. I visited her often and would thumb a lift to the hospital as money was short. One day, whilst visiting her with my mother, we walked along the corridor to her room, and we passed a padded cell, and the door was open. In the cell was Amelia, who was drugged, asleep, and totally naked. It was a shocking sight to see, and was greatly upsetting to both my mother and myself. I played hell with the staff about the incident. On another visit to see Amelia, I walked to her ward, and around 20 patients were all sitting in chairs watching a member of staff walk up and down a row of padded rooms and hit any of the patients who happened to get in her way. Something happened, or made them agitated, and they all started to throw cups and plates. I asked Amelia what it was all about, and she just said it was nothing. It happens every day. They would let me take Amelia home every now and again, and while it was lovely to have her home, she would cry every time I had to take her back. It was heartbreaking, but I knew if I didn't take her back, they would come for her themselves. This went on and on for years, until they began to let her out for longer periods of time. And then one day, Amelia just turned to me and said, "I'm not taking any more pills." There were still ups and downs. Our children, Marie and David, on returning home, managed to save her life when they found her trying to commit suicide. Amelia stuck to her promise of giving up the pills, and she did start to get better, and after 25 or so years, life was getting back to normal. Unfortunately, Amelia began to feel pain in her chest, so we went to the hospital to get her checked. She had an X-ray, which showed a shadow, but a doctor told us it was okay. I had already arranged to take Amelia to Canada to meet her father's family. Her father was a Canadian soldier over in England for the D-Day landings. We still took the journey to Montreal, but as we got off the plane, Amelia collapsed at the bottom of the stairs. She was rushed to St. Guy's Hospital in Montreal, but after 14 days of agony, she died of cancer. Before Amelia met me, she had had a terrible life, and from the age of 3 to 15, lived in an orphanage where she was abused by nuns. She had a bad fall while there and was given the last rites, but she did recover. The story of my time with Amelia was documented in local newspapers and in Woman's Own magazine. When Marie was 14, she had an operation for a growth in her tummy. A friend who was an operation sister was told by the doctor that the growth was probably in her tummy from birth. My youngest son has had a growth on his pituitary gland and has for years, and to this day, taken tablets for it. Belinda, my other daughter, has crumbling bones. When I had an operation for a kidney stone, I was told that it would be a small incision to remove the stone. When I woke up after the operation, I was stitched from the middle of my belly all the way around to my back. A sister in the operating room told me they had never seen an operation like it for just a stone. All my insides were taken out and laid on the op table. The stone itself was about the size of a 5p and multicoloured. It disappeared from my bedside cabinet that night. I later found out that the doctor who operated on me was struck off for incompetence. I was posted to Christmas Island in February 1959 via Aden, Karachi, Delhi, Sri Lanka, Singapore and Australia. On the island we did ship to shore via DUKWS, an amphibious craft. Occasionally we were ordered to go to a camp near the airport, load a box and take it out as far as possible and dump it overboard. 7 of us went down island for a week's holiday to a lagoon. All the trees there were blackened and burnt, with branches lying around on the ground. We enjoyed swimming every day. One day we heard this buzzing noise. There, among the trees, was a scientist head to toe, in green clothing with a glass-type helmet with gloves and boots. He stared at us for a moment and then went on his way, Geiger counter buzzing. We never thought much about it at the time, but it must have been a blast area of the island. I forget a lot. I'm on thyroxine tablets as my thyroid doesn't work properly. I've heard that this is often caused by radiation. I got plenty of that on the island.
Thank you for joining us on the Exposure Magazine podcast. We hope this retelling of David's story by David McIntyre has shed light on the enduring legacy of the British nuclear tests. Thank you for joining us today as we bring Exposure Magazine to life. Like, subscribe and share for more great podcasts.